Hi guys, my name's Tony. I've just bought a brand new 2017 model Triumph Bobber. I live in Finland, so everything's expensive here compared to everywhere else in the world. This was €17,000, whereas in England it's only £10,000. So there's not much difference in a euro and pound now anyway. So it's a lot more expensive, and it's a massive investment. I mean, €17,000, you could buy a lot of stuff with that. So I wanted to make this video to explain why I invested so much money in this bike. I've not had a bike for 10 years, so it took something special for me to A, buy another bike, and B, to choose this bike. A lot of the videos on YouTube nowadays are like guys going to a dealership, borrowing a bike for an hour or less, and just going for a ride, doing the voiceover in the helmet and talking about the bike for an hour, which is cool. And I watched all of them. Pretty much every bobber video on YouTube I watched before I bought this to help me make the decision. But those guys who are just going out borrowing a bike for an hour, it's cool, but they don't have the responsibility, or they've not invested a crap load of their own money into buying it, so they can talk without that much stress or whatever. So I thought a video of an actual owner explaining about the bike, the good and bad bits, and why we chose this bike. So I chose it because it looks freaking awesome. It is the nicest bike I've ever seen, in my opinion, and that is just my opinion. When I seen it on the internet when Triumph released it, I was just like, my jaw hit the floor. I was like, wowee, that is gorgeous. I didn't automatically think I'm going to buy that. I just thought, my God, that's a fantastic looking motorcycle. I wasn't in the market for buying a new motorbike. I just happened to, now and again I'll see what's new in the motorcycling world. As I say, I've not had a bike for 10 years. I wasn't really getting back into the biking or anything. I was just looking around, and then I seen this, and it was just like, wow, that's a nice bike. So I kept thinking about it for a couple of weeks. Watched all the videos, read up on it all, and I just thought, well, you know what, I live in a very nice area in the countryside. We've just got awesome roads here, not very busy. The roads are empty for the most part. They're fantastic biking roads, and we get a lot of bikers coming from the cities. Not well, half an hour to the nearest city, and then 2 hours to Helsinki. So this is like a motorcycle mecca where we live. So I thought maybe it's about time I got a bike, and this one was just like, it was almost calling out to me. But the other colour schemes, I don't really like them, and I wouldn't buy one in any of the other colours. I don't know what it is, but this green and silver colour, it just does it for me hugely. The British Racing Green, possibly being British, there's something there. But my dad, he had a Triumph in the 60s. My uncle, we got Triumphs in the blood kind of thing. If you're a British motorcyclist, someone in your family's owned a Triumph for some time. This is my first ever Triumph. When I lived in England donkeys years ago, I used to have crap bikes like CB500, GS500, Honda Rebel 250, a clapped out VFR 750. I don't know, they were fine bikes when they come out the factory, but I owned them after they'd had 10 owners. They were run down, the chain sprockets were gone, warped discs were a common thing, speedos don't work, fork seals leaking. All my bikes were always bangers, and borderline death traps. So this is like a Rolls Royce in comparison to what I've had previously. It's my first ever brand new bike. In fact, I've never owned a bike that's younger than 10 years old. They've all been old. So this is way out of my area, buying a brand new bike. It's not something I've ever done before, not something I ever thought I would do. But now I'm in my mid-30s, you just, as you get older, you just don't want the hassle of fixing bikes and or maybe breaking down or something, or any sort of crap like that. You just want to get a nice bike and ride it. So that's what I done. I went to Triumph dealership, which is also a BMW dealership in Turku, Finland. I went there, sat on it. My worry, being a big guy, I'm like 6'5", which is about 196 centimeters. My big worry was that I'd be too big for it. I'd look like a bloody gorilla on a monkey bike. So I had to go and sit on it before I'd done anything. I watched all the videos on YouTube. A lot of them, the riders were saying the not tall riders. They were saying it's fine. It's fine for a shorter rider. That doesn't really help big guys. So we just have to go and sit on them and see. So if you're thinking about buying a bobber and you're quite a big guy, I'm 6'5", quite lanky. I'm not overly big. I got like 38-inch waist. This fits like a glove. It really does. I'll sit on it to emphasise. Totally fine. I think it's quite a long bike, so I've got quite a long torso, and it's totally cool. The only thing I did do, I've not adjusted the seat. This is totally, I kept it as it is, as it came out of the Triumph dealership. For 2 weeks I rode it as it came out, and it was fine for the most part. After a while I was just like, I'll tweak a little bit, see if I can get it a bit better. So I've raised the handlebars a good couple inches. They originally were like down here, and I just thought just a little bit higher. I prefer it. It doesn't really make a difference on comfort levels, but I just prefer a bit higher bars. That's all I've done. About two inches. I just undone the bolts there, rotated them up. Then I had to undo the switch gear and clutch lever housing, and just rotate that back up slightly, because when you rotate the handlebars, the lever goes like down here, and then you can't access all the buttons, the info and the indicator switch. It's unless you've got like double jointed thumb, you have to rotate this back. The throttle side doesn't rotate, so the brake lever is about 2 inches lower than the clutch lever, which isn't great, but it's fine for what you don't really notice it. Ideally, I would like them symmetrical, as anybody would, but it's not a big deal. So yeah, overall fits a big guy absolutely fine. Comfort wise, that seat, that is one of the most gorgeous things about the bike, a floating seat. Is it comfortable? It's not bad. It's not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. I can go, and I'm reasonably heavy. I'm like about 95 kilos. I don't know what that is in stones or whatever, but I'm about 95 kilos. I can ride. Say I go out my garden now, go for an hour ride. I'm good for an hour, totally fine. No aches, no anything. Really comfy. And it is actually quite comfy for an hour. After an hour, say an hour and a half, my bum starts to ache a little bit, and my arms don't ache, my legs don't ache, just a bit saddle sore kind of thing. But I've not been on a bike for 10 years. I'll probably get used to it. I think I'm a bit better on it now than when I first got it. Now I can do 2 hours. But you do have to have a break, or at least I have to have a break after say an hour. Just a little break, stretch the legs, and just. I think maybe it's a thing with the suspension. It's all right, the suspension, but when you go over a big bump, you do feel it in your backside. So I've started now to sort of tense the legs. If you see a bump coming, just tense the legs and use your legs as sort of shock absorbers a little bit, and that gives you a bit more. That gives you less bum ache in the long run if you can take the shock out of your bum. So yeah, it's pretty comfortable. It doesn't look that comfortable on first glance, but it is quite comfy. Couple things I want to mention. I mean, I'll put the GoPro on in a bit and we'll go for a ride, but it's so windy. There's no wind protection. You know that. You've got one clock which doesn't do anything to block wind. There's a very windy bike, and I've got an open face helmet, so that's why I'm doing a lot of talking next to the bike, so you can hear me. Once we got on the road, it's just wind noise central. So I'll do the talking now, bang the GoPro on, head out. I might do a voiceover on that later. But a couple issues now while I can talk. People have complained about the front brake. It's a bit feeble. I've not found that. When I first drove out the showroom, yeah, it was feeble, but as the pads have bed in, it's pretty fine now. And I've had to test it a little bit when a fox ran out in front of me when I was doing about 80 kilometers an hour, and a fox and a couple little fox cubs ran across the country road in front of me, and I had to give it a handful then, and it stopped all right. And you want to use the back brake as well. You don't want to like not use the back brake ever. It's moving parts are best if you use them. So I use both, combined braking, which is, I think, it's a sensible way of braking anyway. The front forks are a bit soft, so even if the brakes were more powerful, you'd just be diving and bottoming out the forks anyway. So the brakes for what they are, the front brake, if it suits the soft suspension, you don't just bottom out when you bang the brake on. You can do an emergency stop fine. People are saying most people brake with 2 fingers, and this often uses more than 2 fingers. You need to grab it fully to make it stop. These guys must have weak fingers. I've only had it a couple of weeks now, but I've done 400 kilometers on it. I've never had to use more than 2 fingers to brake on this. It's totally adequate. I don't have overly strong fingers. My fingers are very average. 2-finger braking's totally fine. Never had to use any more than that. And that's just on the front brake sometimes. Most of the time I'll use the back as well, but I've tested it. 2 fingers only on the front brake. It's totally fine. So that whole weak front brake issue, it's a non-issue. Don't read too much into that. The more you use it, the more the pads break in. The brakes get better the more you use the bike. I think if these guys go into a showroom and taking out a brand new one, the brakes are pretty rubbish on any new bike until the pads bed in. Another issue, the fuel range. People have said the fuel range is abysmal. I disagree. I've tested it, I've filled up, and I've just rode until the fuel light comes on. First tank, I got 170 kilometers, which is about 110 miles, I think, 105, 110 miles, and that's fine. That is absolutely fine in my book. Over 100 miles on a tank. That's that's not. You're not stopping at every petrol station that some people make out. That's fine. Second tank, I've done a few runs without measuring the fuel range, so half tanks filled up, half tanks. So this one now, I've done a big ride a couple nights ago, and I'm on 130 something kilometers now, and it's still on 4 bars. So I reckon I'll get maybe 150 kilometers plus out of this tank as well, which is nearly 100 miles again. So this whole fuel range being abysmal on a bobber, I don't buy it. If you're driving like a bloody lunatic, full throttle and everywhere, it's a 1200cc bike. If you're going everywhere full throttle, it's gonna guzzle the gas, right? If you're riding sensibly, and I don't drive it. Bear in mind, it's still in its breaking in phase, so I'm not redlining it, but I'm giving it a good handful every time I pull away. You know, you can't not do that. The bobber's it's just so nice to ride. The noise, the feel, the acceleration's really good on it. So you can't not pull away, giving it some juice. So that I don't ride it gently, and I'm getting over 100 miles to a tank. I think the killer for the fuel efficiency is if you're going fast. I tend to do 50, 60 miles an hour everywhere. If you're doing like 70, 80, 90 mile an hour, you're gonna use more fuel, because it's not an aerodynamic bike, and the faster you go, the faster you're using fuel. So, but it's not comfortable. I took it on the motorway to test what it would be like on a long trip, and I got up to 120, 130 kilometers an hour, which is about 75, 80 mile an hour, and it just was not comfortable. It was bearable. If I had to go somewhere on a motorway, I could possibly do it, but it wasn't pleasant, and I couldn't wait to get off the next junction on the motorway and get on the country roads again. On the country roads, I just sit at like 80, 90, 100 kilometers an hour, and it's absolutely optimum speed. It's a cruiser. It's good for cruising. The cruising speeds are just so nice. Handles fantastic. Some people say it's not flickable. It's entirely flickable. For the style it is, it's so agile. It really is. You can scrape the pegs easily on it. I mean, in the sense, if you want to scrape them, it's easy to do. They don't scrape easy. I've gone round roundabouts like at good speeds, expecting the pegs to get ground, and they don't. You got to lean over a fair bit to grind them out, but you can do so if you want to. The grip level, it's never ending. You can just keep leaning over. You can go crazy speeds into roundabouts and bends and junctions. You can go crazy speeds, and it handles it just fine. It's really good handling bike, and that's again stock. I've not done anything to it. Hasn't really putting the handlebars up hasn't really affected the handling for me. The handle's fantastic. The sound, I'll see if I can get a nice sound. Video doesn't really pick it up so well, but let's see if I can get a good sound out of it. Okay. Hopefully that came across all right in the camera. When I've got the GoPro on, when I listen to it back on the computer, it sounds like a Super Dream, really, on the camera. In real life, it sounds freaking awesome. So don't take too much stock on what videos sound like when you're listening to the bobber, and if it's affecting your decision to buy one, just don't worry about the sound. If in person, it sounds awesome. So you don't need to worry about it. What else is there? A couple things with the Triumph build quality. Quite a few bolts were loose, and it wasn't down to riding it. They work loose. They just weren't tightened in the factory. The handlebar, what's that called? Bracket. The bottom two bolts were loose. Not loose that they were going to fall out, but they hadn't been tightened, not been snugged up. That was an issue. I think one of the headlight bolts were a bit loose. One of the fork bolts here that just keeps the indicator on or something, that was loose. So Triumph quality control, that needs working on.